Manifest v2 extensions are finally going away. Is this really the end of ad blockers? Find out on the Hacker Show. Get ready for some serious hacking. So Manifest v2 is the old standard for Chrome extensions that's being replaced by the newer Manifest v3, which has improved security, privacy, and performance. So what does this mean for users? Well, they might now start to experience issues with their extensions that are still using Manifest v2, and many ad blockers, such as uBlock Origin, are going to be affected by this change. And uBlock Origin is used by tens of millions of people. For instance, Chrome has over 29 million users using uBlock Origin. There's also many users on Firefox as well, and other browsers. And the latest version of Chrome, which is 138, turned off Manifest v2 extensions, such as uBlock Origin, for all users. And the impact was felt worldwide. For instance, on Hacker News, you may have noticed various posts such as, uBlock Origin on Chrome is finally gone. The latest version of Chrome, 138, removes Manifest v2 and all extensions that rely on it. And this is what you might have seen if you're using uBlock Origin. This extension was turned off because it is no longer supported. And here you can see it was deactivated and people couldn't switch it back on. So most people took this news update surprisingly well. I'm just kidding. They're all freaking out on the internet. For instance, on Reddit, you have all these different posts, such as, uBlock Origin fully disabled on Chrome now, with a lot of upvotes. And, what happened? uBlock Origin. Or, uBlock Origin has been permanently disabled for Chrome, etc. So just lots of different posts where people wanted to rant about what was going on. And Chrome 138 is the last version to fully support Manifest v2 extensions. And you can see here, Chrome 139 is going stable on Tuesday, August 5th, 2025. And on that day, the stable release day, that's when Chrome will auto-update for all users, and then people will have Chrome 139, which will be unable to use Manifest v2 extensions at all. Now, if you noticed in the fine print here, there is an enterprise policy that basically allows the temporary continuation of Manifest v2 extensions on Chrome 138, but that is going to be removed in Chrome 139. So if people still need to use Manifest v2 extensions until that August 5th, 2025 date, there is a way to do it. And that is via the extension Manifest v2 availability, which you can see here, and that's good through Chrome 138. And there are instructions on how to use that on Reddit. So for instance here, if you follow the instructions for what's currently the best way to force re-enable uBlock Origin in Chrome, here's what you can do. You can go to the Chrome flags page, search for Allow Legacy Extension Manifest Versions, enable it, relaunch the browser, download the latest zip from the uBlock GitHub page, and then you can extract it to a folder, and then in the Extensions tab in Chrome, you can load an unpacked extension. Here's how that might look. So here is the Chrome flags page, and you can see under Experiments, Allow Legacy Extension Manifest Versions. Make sure you click to enable that. Then go to github.com/gorehill/ublock/releases and then download the Chromium zip file, which contains the ad blocker. Then after you've unzipped that to a folder, make sure you go to the Chrome://extensions page and then click to turn on developer mode. That will be in the upper right corner here. And then you can go to Load Unpacked, which basically then has you select a folder where you've unzipped the extension. And then once you've loaded it, then you have uBlock Origin development build. And right now that's 1.65.1.0. And it's essentially the same as the previous version. But now you can see you might have two different versions of uBlock Origin installed at this point, which would be the old version that was turned off automatically by Chrome, and then the new one that you just added through the enterprise policy that basically continues uBlock origin up until Chrome 139. So that is the workaround for now. And note that the error that you see there is because Manifest version 2 is deprecated and support will be removed in 2025, which is pretty much happening now. And of course, remember that stable release date, that's the important date to keep in mind, Tuesday, August 5th, 2025. That's the end all date where you have no choice but to auto update to the newest version of Chrome, and then you won't be able to use any Manifest v2 extensions anymore. So here you can see this will go away next month, according to Reddit. Yep, version 139 releasing August 5th will remove all workarounds for Manifest v2 extensions. So keep that in mind. So what if you still need Manifest v2 extensions after August 5th, 2025? Or what if you need to run test automation on sites containing ads and you need to click on everything, but you don't want to accidentally click on any of the ads, to prevent the click fraud because that's pretty bad? Well, you've got a few options available to you if that is the case. Option 1, there's a thing called Chrome for Testing, which is designed to solve these problems. Chrome for Testing is a dedicated flavor of Chrome targeting the testing use case. And it doesn't have auto update, which means that once you install a specific version of Chrome for Testing, such as Chrome for Testing 136, it's not going to update to a newer version that may remove features, such as the ability to use Manifest v2 extensions. And if you're wondering where to get Chrome for Testing binaries, that's pretty easy. The Chrome for Developers page has a solution for you. The easiest way to download Chrome for Testing binaries for your platform is by using the command line utility here, available via npm. So here are some examples. For instance, npx puppeteer/browsers install Chrome stable, or you can use those command line utilities in order to get an earlier version of Chrome, and I would recommend run 36 because then you can avoid some other issues that are there. So where do you get Chrome for Testing? Well, if you go to googlechromlabs.github.io/chrome-for-testing, there is a Chrome for Testing availability section which shows you the stable, beta, dev, and canary channels. And there's also a link to the JSON API endpoints so that you can also download earlier versions of Chrome for Testing. So if you go to there, that'll take you to the GitHub page for that, Chrome for Testing availability, where there's going to be several API endpoints. And there's also going to be several supported binaries and platforms for this. So there's Chrome for Testing, Chrome Driver, and Chrome Headless Shell. Now, Chrome Headless Shell is basically a special version of Chrome for Testing that you can't see because it's running headlessly. And this might be good for test automation because it might speed things up because it doesn't have the additional overhead of having to spin up a regular browser that you see. So there's also a bunch of supported platforms for that. There's Linux 64, Mac ARM 64, Mac x64, Win32, and Win64. So tons of different supported platforms that you can use, and there are also additional API endpoints that you can use to figure out what the latest version is at a specific point. So note that if you expand the JSON API endpoints page, you'll see at the very bottom there is a latest versions per milestone with downloads.json. If you go into that, you're going to find the specifics such as the URLs where these binaries live. So for instance, in the case that you're getting Chrome for Testing 136 on, say, Mac x64, you will have the URL here, https://storage.googleapis.com/Chrome for Testing public, and then the version number, and then Mac-x64, although you're probably at Mac-ARM64 by now if you're using like an M1, M2, M3 Mac, etc. Or if you're running on Linux, there's a version for that. Windows has its own section. So here's where you'd get the links for the binaries for Chrome for Testing in order to get earlier versions. Google supplies those freely. And the reason I mentioned before going back to Chrome 136 or Chrome for Testing 136 is that the load extension flag is still there because that was removed in newer versions of Chrome, and that basically allowed you to load an extension as you spin up your browser for automated testing. So that can be convenient if you're, say, running a manifest v2 extension right from your automated tests. Here you can see that there was a commit remove dash dash load dash extension switch on Chrome builds. So that was already removed, and that was done in April 2025. And that's why Chrome 136 is the version you probably want if you're going to downgrade to an earlier version of Chrome for manifest v2 compatibility. So option 2, you can migrate to manifest v3, and that is the latest, greatest standard for Chrome extensions. And there's a whole set of checklist items on the developer.chrome.com page. And then if you go to the docs, extensions, develop, migrate section, you have all these things that you need to know if you're trying to migrate your old manifest v2 extension onto the newer manifest v3. So for instance, you would update the manifest.json file to be specific to v3, you'd migrate to a service worker, you'd update your API calls, etc. All these different items of the checklist that you can go through to make sure that your old manifest v2 extension is working properly when you migrate it to manifest v3. If you go to the GitHub page, Google Chrome/Chrome extensions samples, there's tons of different examples that are already using manifest v3, and this can help speed up the process of upgrading your extension to manifest v3 because you might be able to find an example that already does what you're looking for. And if you're trying to build an ad blocker, you may want to familiarize yourself with this chrome.declarativeNetRequest. Now this is the API used to block or modify network requests by specifying declarative rules. This lets extensions modify network requests without intercepting them and viewing their content, thus providing more privacy. This is the key to building an ad blocker. And after I read that, I followed the instructions, and all of a sudden I had a simple ad blocker using manifest v3 with fewer than 40 lines of code handling all the basics of ad blocking. So if you go in, you would set your manifest version to 3, you'd give it a name such as simple ad blocker, you'd set the version you want, and then make sure in permissions you set declarative net request. And then under the declarative net request section, you would then go to rule resources, and then you would set your ID, you'd set enabled to be true, and then you'd set your path to be, say, rules.json, and then you'd have a rules.json file where then you set the ID, priority, and then the action to type block, and then you could set the condition and the URL filter to have, say, URL doubleclick.net, and that would make it so that any doubleclick.net URLs on a certain page would not load. And another common domain that you'd want to block for blocking ads would be googleadservices.com, and it would follow the same format that you used for the doubleclick.net. You just set a different ID, so for instance ID 2, you could also set priority 1, action, type, block, set your condition, URL filter, and then that domain, and then all of a sudden you've got a working ad blocker with fewer than 40 lines of code. And you can see here, as we were testing it on w3schools.com/js/default, when we were going to JavaScript tutorial, you can see that the extension has loaded, simple ad blocker, and all this white space you see here is the ads that were blocked via this ad blocker, because normally there would be advertisements there, but now they're not there because the ad blocker blocked them. And if you go to the Chrome://extensions tab for that ad blocker, you'll see that it is really small, size less than 1 megabyte, probably making it one of the smallest ad blockers in the whole world. And if you look down, you can see in permissions, block content on any page, and the site access shows this extension has no additional site access, which means that there's better privacy, you can still block content on any page, and it's like minimal size. So all of a sudden there, you've got a working ad blocker with very few lines of code. If you're interested in downloading your own copy of the simple ad blocker, you can get it from the SeleniumBase GitHub page. Just go to github.com/seleniumbase/seleniumbase, and then once you scroll down, you'll see the folders, and there should be a SeleniumBase folder in there. So if you click on that, you'll see a few more folders inside there. Scroll down again, and then you should find the extensions folder. If you go to there, you'll find all the SeleniumBase extensions, which includes adblock.zip, which contains the simple ad blocker that I demoed for you. So if you clone the repo and then extract the zip file to its own folder, adblock, then you'll find the manifest.json file there and the rules.json file there. And if you go inside those, you'll see that the code in there should be exactly the same as what I already showed you, and it's less than 40 lines of code, so it's pretty easy to get ad blocking in Manifest v3. So option 3, you can see what else is out there that uses Manifest v3. So for instance, if you went to reddit.com, you might find that someone was recommending uBlock Origin Lite, which is built for Manifest v3. Now, some people might say that it is a bad, inferior alternative, but then other people might say, OMG, it works, thanks so much. So hey, you never know. Sometimes people judge an extension before actually trying it out. So you never know what's out there or how good something is unless you try it out and find out for yourself. Option 4 is you can switch to Edge, because apparently that still works with Manifest v2 extensions. You can see here uBlock Origin is enabled on the latest version of Edge, so maybe they're not transitioning off that yet. Or you can try other browsers. For instance, on Firefox, there's also uBlock Origin, and it's enabled on the latest version, so maybe it's working there too. That's a possibility. And on Reddit, there are a lot of people complaining that Manifest v2 didn't work on Chrome, so they're maybe trying to switch to Firefox or something else, or maybe they're just saying that and not actually switching to Firefox because Chrome is like a million times better. It's got all this flexibility and stuff that you can do. People might just be like rage saying they're switching even though they're not actually intending to switch. But note that 9 out of 10 Microsoft employees recommend Edge. And that's because the other 1 out of 10 get nominated for the next round of layoffs. So there you have it, lots of options to choose from. But be sure to decide by August 5th, 2025, because that's when Chrome 139 has its stable release, and that's when Manifest v2 extensions will be switched off for good, even if you're using the enterprise policy to keep them on a little longer. Funeral services for Manifest v2 extensions will be held across the street from the cemetery where Google Glass, Google Wave, and Google Plus are buried. Long live Manifest v3 extensions!
Long live the Musketeers!
He's mine.
So some people think that talking about ad blockers is a taboo subject. Maybe because they can impact profits from advertising, and if ad blockers were illegal, then they'd be removed from the extensions section of the web store. You can see here, Chrome Web Store, uBlock Origin Lite is there, which means Google's okay with having ad blockers there. The original uBlock Origin was removed because it didn't support the newer Manifest v3 extension system. You can see here, this extension is no longer available because it doesn't follow best practices for Chrome extensions. So there you have it. If you don't follow the rules or the best practices, then your extension is out of there. So on the topic of legality, some people thought that my previous YouTube video on bypassing paywalls was going to get banned. In those specific cases, the websites had already made the data public to search engines, but attempted to make the data private to the general visitors via JavaScript. Now in those cases, the sites with the paywalls had already made the data public to search engines, but attempted to make the same data private to general visitors via JavaScript. And that's not much of a paywall because web browsers allow users to disable JavaScript easily just by clicking a checkbox in the DevTools debugger. There you have it, the debugger. Click Disable JavaScript. All of a sudden, any paywall that's activated when you scroll a page won't trigger because JavaScript is disabled. So, very simple loophole for those types of cases. So therefore, sites should assume that if search engines can see their data, then they should expect that general users can find that same data too. So at the beginning of this presentation, I may have skipped the part where I introduce myself.
Who are you? It's blank.
I'm a secret agent.
I'm Michael Mintz, and I do cybersecurity, automation, and a bunch of things with Python and JavaScript. I also created the Selenium-based automation framework, which has over 10,000 stars on GitHub. You could say that I'm a bit of an automation superhero.
אהרון שילוב של מכונה ואשכנזי.
Huh?
When I'm not at my computer, there are several places where you might be able to find me, such as on the Jumbotron at sporting events. Or maybe in the season ticket holders section of a soccer/football game to witness the greatest comeback in Major League Soccer of the last 20 years. That was New England Revolution's greatest comeback in club history, which occurred on Saturday, June 28, 2025, when they rallied from a 3-0 deficit to draw 3-3 against the Colorado Rapids. What a game. Even movies can't perfectly mimic that same level of energy and excitement from scoring the tying goal in a soccer match. But some come close. On the topic of Google and me, here's a fun fact. So I met Google co-founder Sergey Brin before Google even existed, and that's because my parents went to college with Sergey Brin's parents. So here's my parents here, here's Sergey Brin's parents here. They had all went to Moscow State University together, graduated together, and because of the anti-Semitism in the Soviet Union back then, they decided to leave the country together. So this was back in 1979, and they left, and then they came over to the United States, where they spent summer vacations on Cape Cod together because they were friends. Here's me and Sergey Brin and my sister. Sergey and my sister, so they were around, 13 years old, so around the same age, whereas I was 3 years old. This was like 1986, the 4 photos. My sister, Sergey Brin again, me, Sergey, my sister, etc. So, it was close family. My mom, made a lot of phone calls to Sergey Brin's mom because, they were close friends. They talked. Sadly, Sergey Brin's mom, Eugenia, passed away of Parkinson's late last year, so I guess, bad things happened, but they were pretty much really close friends up until then. Let's see, but it's not the first time that my family had to move from one country to another. So pre-World War II, my mom's parents were living by Kiev, Ukraine, and they decided to get the heck out of there in order to go to Moscow because they sensed the imminent danger that was approaching. And it's a good thing they sensed the danger because in World War II, Germany invaded Ukraine as part of Operation Barbarossa.
The German invasion of the Soviet Union, codenamed Barbarossa, began on June 22, 1941.
There was a massive ground and air assault.
Over 3.5 million German and other Axis troops launched an attack along a 1,800-mile front.
And once they conquered it, really bad things happened because they killed off lots of Jews as part of the Holocaust. Over 1 million Jews in that area died. It was pretty grim. Outside of Kiev, there was a ravine called Babi Yar, where a lot of Jews were tricked to going there, And then once they got there, they were murdered by the Nazis and Ukrainian collaborators that basically got them there. So yeah, that was a pretty grim, really bad event, and just massacres happened all over Ukraine during the Holocaust because the Germans were there and they didn't like the Jews, so bad things happened. Although, if any Jews had managed to escape Ukraine before World War II, or even before World War I in this screenshot here, then they might have had a better chance of survival. So my mom's family is Dayan, and there were some Dayan family members that left pre-World War I, Shmuel Dayan and Devorah Dayan, who basically became famous because their son was Moshe Dayan, a famous general in the Israeli army. And I think something like Moshe Dayan's great-grandfather was my great-great-great-grandfather, or something like that. But anyway, there's the Dayan family connection from my mother's side of the family. So yeah, the Dayan family became quite famous in Israel. And of course, I visited Israel a lot, and even though I was never a general like Moshe Dayan or even a soldier, I did visit quite a few IDF people because I was living in Israel in 2010, and then I went back to Israel several times after that. So in this top left photo here, that's me proposing to my girlfriend who's now my wife, and you've got the IDF in the background. And then in the bottom left, that's me visiting an IDF base in Israel. And bottom right, that's just, hanging out with some IDF people at some rest stop. So yeah, essentially, I spent quite a bit of time with the IDF, just not as a soldier. If I was actually in the army, they'd probably place me in a very special unit.
Who wanted the chicken cross the road? Take it from the left to the right. Right. Hit. Hit. He stepped out of range, got hit by a tree. He ain't no chicken no more. No.
And even though I never got to meet with a sitting president, just like Moshe Dayan did with Richard Nixon, my wife and I did get to meet Tulsi Gabbard. And Tulsi Gabbard is, as many of you know, she's the director of national intelligence for the United States, and she works for Trump. And here's my wife and I meeting with her at a house party in New Hampshire before she became the director of national intelligence. And even though she was never a president, she did run for president. So there is that similar connection there. So note that translations of last names may vary slightly when translated into English from other languages. For instance, Dayan versus Dayan, if you go from Ukrainian to Hebrew to English, or Ukrainian to Russian to English, the immigration service, when they write down the last name, when they're, translating it to official card or something, it might vary slightly even if it's the same last name. Situation kind of happened with my uncle, got a slightly alternate spelling of Dayan when he came over with his family to America to join my family that were already there. And my uncle kind of resembles Moshe Dayan just slightly, just without the eye patch. There's some similarities there. So that's just some interesting history related to my family, distant family, and family connections. Let's get back to the presentation. So long live Manifest v3 extensions, which are the future of Chrome extensions. And let's hope ad blockers don't go away forever, because some people really need them to stay focused on whatever activity they're working on. Otherwise, people could get distracted and then go way off topic, just like you saw a few times during this presentation. And be sure to check out Selenium Base on GitHub, which is the web automation framework that I created. It has lots of capabilities for testing and even stealth capabilities for bypassing CAPTCHAs, etc. There's lots of powerful tools built within it, such as the recorder, which lets you generate scripts automatically. And there's just tons of different functionality there that could be quite useful. And there's a whole section called UC mode and CDP mode for the stealth capabilities. So that concludes this presentation. Fly safe, automate well, live long and prosper, and maybe see you on the bridge of the USS Enterprise. See y'all next time.